Okay, Eli, let's continue with the Piper at the Gates of Dawn. All right. Then suddenly the mole felt a great awe fall upon him, an awe that turned his muscles to water, bowed his head, and rooted his feet to the ground. It was no panic, terror. Indeed, he felt wonderfully at peace and happy. But it was an awe that smote and held him, and without seeing, he knew it could only mean that some august presence was very, very near. With difficulty he turned to look for his friend, and saw him at the side, cowed, stricken, and trembling violently. And still there was utter silence in the populous bird-haunted branches around them, and still the light grew and grew. Perhaps he would never have dared to raise his eyes, but that, though the piping was now hushed, the call and the summons seemed still dominant and imperious. He might not refuse. Were death himself waiting to strike him instantly once he looked with mortal eyes on things rightly kept hidden? Trembling, he obeyed and raised his humble head, and then, in that utter clearness and eminent dawn, while nature, flushed with fullness and incredible color, seemed to hold her breath for the event, he looked in the very eyes of the friend and helper, saw the backward sweep of the curved horns gleaming in the glowing daylight, saw the stern, hooked nose beneath the kindly eyes that were looking down on them humorously, while the bearded mouth broke into half smile at the corners, saw the rippling muscles of the arm that lay across the broad chest, the long, supple hand still holding the panpipes, only just fallen away from the parted lips, saw the splendid curves of the shaggy limbs disposed in majestic ease on the sward, saw last of all, nestling between the very hooves, sleeping soundly in entire peace and contentment, the little round, pudgy, childish form of the baby otter. All this he saw for one moment, breathless and intense, vivid on the morning sky, and still he looked, he lived, and still he lived, he wondered. "Rat!" he found breath to whisper shakingly. "Are you afraid?" "Afraid?" murmured the rat, his eyes shining with unutterable love. "Afraid of him? Oh, never, never! And yet, oh, Mole, I'm afraid." Then the two animals crouched to the earth, bowed their heads, and did worship. Sudden and magnificent, the sun's broad golden disk showed itself over the horizon, facing them, and for the first rays, shooting across the level water meadows, took the animals full in the eye and dazzled them. When they were able to look once more, the vision had vanished, and the air was full of the carol of birds that hailed the dawn. As they stared blankly in dumb misery, deepening as they slowly realized all they had seen and all they had lost, a capricious little breeze dancing up from the surface of the water tossed the aspens, shook the dewy roses, and blew lightly and caressingly in their faces, and with its soft touch came instant oblivion. For this was the last best gift that the kindly demigod is careful to bestow on those to whom he has revealed himself in their helping, the gift of forgetfulness, lest the awful remembrance should remain in grows and overshadow mirth and pleasure, and the great haunting memory should spoil all the afterlives of the little animals, helped out the difficulties in order that they should be happy and light-hearted as before. Mole rubbed his eyes and stared at Rat, who was looking about him in a puzzled sort of way. "I beg your pardon? What did you say, Rat?" he asked. "I think I was only remarking," said Rat slowly, "that this was the right sort of place, and that here, if anywhere, we should find him. And look, why, there he is, the little fellow." And with a cry of delight he ran towards the slumbering portally. But Mole stood still a moment, held in thought, as one wakened suddenly from a beautiful dream, who struggles to recall it and can recapture nothing but a dim sense of the beauty of it. The beauty! Till that, too, fades away in the turn, and the dreamer bitterly accepts the hard, cold waking and all of its penalties. So Mole, after struggling with his memory of the brief space, shook his head sadly and followed the rat. Portly woke up with a joyous squeak and wiggled with pleasure at the sight of his father's friends who had played with him so often in past days. In a moment, however, his face grew blank, and he fell to hunting round in a circle with a pleading whine, as a child that has fallen happily asleep in his nurse's arms and wakes to find itself alone and laid in a strange place, and searches corners and cupboards and runs from room to room, despair growing silently in the heart. Even so, Portly searched the island and searched, dodged, and unwearingly, till at last the black moment came for giving it up and sitting down and crying bitterly. The mole ran quickly to comfort the little animal, but Rat, lingering, looked long and doubtfully at the certain hoof marks deep in the sward. Some great animal has been here, he murmured slowly and thoughtfully, and stood musing, his mind strangely stirred. Come along, Rat, called the mole. Think of the poor otter waiting up there by the ford. Portly had soon been comforted by the promise of the treat, a jaunt on the river in Mr. Rat's real boat, and the two animals conducted him to the water's side. See, there they are. Water's side, placed him securely between them in the bottom of the boat, and paddled off down the backwater. The sun was fully up by now and hot on them. Birds sang lustily and without restraint, and flowers smiled and nodded from either bank. But somehow, so thought the animals, with less of richness and blaze of color than they seemed to remember seeing quite recently somewhere. They wondered where. The main river reached again. They turned the boat's head upstream towards the point where they knew their friend was keeping his lonely vigil. As they drew near the familiar ford, the mole took the boat in the bank, and they lifted Portly out, and setting him on his legs on the tower patch, gave him his marching orders and friendly farewell, pat him on the back, and shoved him out into midstream. They watched the little animal as he waddled through the path, contently with importance, watched him till they saw his muzzle suddenly lift and his waddle break into a clumsy amble as he quickened his pace with shrill whines and wiggles of recognition. Looking up the river, they could see Otter start up, tense and rigid, from out of the shallows where he crouched in dumb patience, and could hear his amazed and joyous barks as he bounded up through the osiers on the path. Then the mole, with a strong pull of one oar, swung the boat round and let the full stream bear down on them, whither it would, their quest now happily ended. I feel strangely tired, Rat, said the mole, leaning wearily over his oars as the boat drifted. It's being up all night, you say, perhaps, but that's nothing. We do. Oh, look at there's Father Otter. He was so excited. We do as much half the nights as the week as this time of year. No, I feel as if it's been through something very exciting and rather terrible, and it's just over, and yet nothing particular has happened. Oh, something very surprising and splendid and beautiful, murmured the rat, leaning back and closing his eyes. I feel just as you do, Mole, simply dead tired, though not body tired. It's lucky we've got the stream with us to take us home. Isn't it jolly to feel the sun again, soaking into one's bones, and the hark of the wind playing in the reeds? It's like music, faraway music, said the mole, nodding drowsily. So I was thinking, muttered the rat, dreamful and languid. Dance music. The littling sort that runs on without a stop, but with words in it too. It passes into words and out of them again. I catch them at intervals. Then it's a dance music once more, and then nothing but the reeds, soft, thin, whispering. You hear better than I, said the mole sadly. I cannot catch the words. Let me try and give you them, said the rat softly as his eyes closed. Now it is turning into words again, faint but clear. Ooh, he's doing what the wind's saying in words. This is interesting. Let's see. Lest the awe should dwell, and turn your frolic to fret, you shall look on my power at the helping hour, but then you shall forget. Now the reeds take it up. Forget, forget, they sigh, and it dies away in the rustle in a whisper. Then the voice returns. Lest limbs be reddened and rent, I spring the trap that is set. As I lose the snare, you may glimpse me there, for surely you shall forget. Row near, mole, near to the reeds. It's hard to catch, and grows each minute fainter. Helper and healer I cheer, small waifs in the woodland wet. Strays I find in it, wounds I bind in it, biting them all forget. Near, near, no, it's no good, the song has died away into reed talk. But what do the words mean? Asked the wondering mole. That I do not know, said the rat simply. I pass them on to you as they reach me. Ah, now they return again, and this time full and clear. This time at last, it's the real, the unmistakable thing, simple, passionate, perfect. Well, let's have it then, said the mole, after he had waited patiently for a few minutes, half dozing in the boat. See, there they are. They're in the boat, and they're listening to what the wind is saying. And there's Father Otter, and then there's Portly, and he's so excited. But no answer came. He looked and understood the silence with a smile of much happiness on his face and something of a listening look. Still lingering there, the weary rat was fast asleep. I think this is good, and we will start chapter 8 tomorrow. Let's look at this again. Isn't that such a cool picture? I love you, sweetheart. Mwah!